So I've looked at Caroline's RDLs a few times, and every time I've watched them, they've improved. And I think she's doing a really good job here. So she used to go all the way down really low, and she's still going quite low, but she's definitely cutting ROM a bit. She's getting lower now, you see. It started off better than it ended. Provided this video comes out when I think it's coming out, I should actually be back from holiday, but I did film this video before I went away so I could get ahead, you know, get prepared. We're going to cover something that I was actually meant to cover about 3 weeks ago, I want to say, but things got delayed to other videos and whatnot. And that's another kind of like battle of the home workouts, or home workout comparison, we'll say. I almost wanted to kind of nail two birds with one stone here, in the sense that obviously about a month or two ago I did a video kind of questioning where Caroline was. A few days later, she then released a video. Good timing, I know, we were thinking crazy. And then people say, oh, Harry, can you ever look at her full body workout she's just released? Well, I didn't really want to do it on its own because I thought, you know, I've covered Caroline and her own workouts here and there. If I'm going to do it, I'll do it as part of like another video. And then obviously a lot of people sent me MadFit, and they said, Harry, look, this creator's huge. She's got nearly 7.5 million subscribers. What do you think she's like in comparison to a lot of the other smaller channels? And that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to look at a comparison between Caroline's 20-minute dumbbell full body workout, compound movements, no repeat, and MadFit's 20-minute full body sculpt workout, light dumbbells at home workout. No, the videos aren't identical. I'm never going to get a direct comparison between the identical workouts. It's not going to happen. But what we can do is try and find two similar workouts that are comparable enough. And that's what these are. They're dumbbell only full body home workouts. So that's ticking a lot of boxes right there. Before we do so, obviously we're going to do the bits and bobs that need to be done. If at any point throughout this entire video you decide you like the video and maybe even learn something, please do consider liking the video and maybe even subscribing to the channel by clicking the red button down below and maybe even tickling the bell next to it so you get notified when I upload every week, twice a week. And if you have a question you want me to answer at the end of the next video, then please drop it down in the comment section for comment question of the week, and I shall do so. It's the last one of this hat series, I think. Again, like I said, I prepared for the holiday, but was only disappointed with what came. If nothing else, I'm a big fan of the colour because I'm a big fan of pink. I think it's a bloody cool colour, and it looks quite good on the black and pink thing. That's quite a good look. So I'm going to skip the intro part and we're going to go through the workout itself. Again, for the sake of keeping time down, I may edit out certain bits, but we're going to cover as much of it as we can without it being too long a video. A new location, Caroline, looking nice. Big fan of that background. So the single arm bent over row. I really like how Caroline uses her weight as a reference there. So it's good to see how much she's lifting, as you can, like I said, use that as a reference point for how much you might be able to lift yourself. Control the lowering portion at all times. Think about moving through a large range of motion. A lot of people rush the eccentric portion of reps, which is the lowering down, which is essentially missing out on potential gains. So the big thing here is you see Caroline's keeping her upper arm close to the body. She's not allowing her upper arm to go past the body, or past the torso, I should say. So the lats are at their shortest position. The lats is this muscle you see here, this like line running down there, that's part of the lats. The lats are at their shortest position when the upper arm is in line with the body. If you take the upper arm beyond that point, you're now bringing in more muscles of the mid back. Therefore, when you're doing a movement in which the upper arm is close to the body, likely targeting the lats, you don't really want to go beyond the body because, again, you're just bringing in muscles that you don't really want to work, and maybe arguably taking away from the muscles you do want to work, like I said, being the lats. The big thing here is almost like trying to pull your elbow to your hips. A lot of people spend too much time trying to pull directly up, and this then creates more elbow flexion, so more of a bend in the arm, which then brings in more of the biceps. If you want to reduce how involved the biceps are, focus on bringing the elbow to the hips, less of a bend in the arm, but the upper arm is still traveling through the same range of motion, therefore the lats are still working as they should be. If you want to make this a bit easier for yourself, as you may find your lower back becomes a bit of a limiting factor here, don't hesitate to lean on something, let's say lean on like a chair or something similar, because this will then reduce how much of a limiting factor, like I said, your lower back and maybe your core might be, or maybe even your legs as well. Front squat is not my favorite movement when looking at hypertrophy, but I don't think that is the sole goal here, being hypertrophy. I think in the realm of home workouts, when you're limited to dumbbells and whatnot, I think the front squat is a very good option. And ultimately, the thing that's great about it is because it can sometimes help you maintain an upright torso position, it can also help with you nailing depth, which means a lot of people may find it easier to get lower. But if you are struggling with depth here, don't be afraid to elevate your heels slightly on like a plate if you have one, or maybe a couple of books or something. That will almost allow you to compensate for any ankle mobility hindrance you may have, therefore allow you to get a little bit deeper. And we know the quads really do respond very well to going very deep and kind of reaching that stretch position of a movement, especially squat variations. So it makes sense to go as deep as you can comfortably. Again, that's as deep as you can. If your heels start lifting off the floor, then you've gone too far. You want to keep them planted and keep that weight spread across your midfoot. The dumbbell chest row technically is a floor press. The thing here you see with Caroline, she's really flaring her elbows out. What we would typically do is, if you can, tuck the elbows in a bit so the upper arm is kind of coming down about 45 degrees. So the pec fibers run down like so. They don't run directly across. If you then flare across like that, you're not pressing in line with the fiber orientation. As they go down, you want to press like so, because again, it better aligns with the fibers you're looking to work. Therefore, when doing dumbbell presses or any kind of like chest pressing variation, I would typically, rather than pressing like that, tuck the elbows slightly. It'll also be a bit nicer on the shoulders, as some people do find flaring the elbows a bit problematic for their shoulders. So if that is you and you're struggling with that issue, just try tucking the elbows slightly. Static lunge is a very fair movement. The thing with this is I would always kind of favor going as low as you can comfortably. So Caroline's shin angle is pretty vertical on the way down, which is pretty good, because when you're maintaining this vertical shin angle, it's going to help with bringing the glutes a bit more. If the shin starts traveling more forward and the angle gets a bit more extreme, you're then going to start bringing in more of the quads. If you do want to focus more on the quads, elevate the heels slightly, bring in the stance so you're a bit closer, and then think about driving your knee as far forward as possible. So the dumbbell pullover, to increase intensity, don't bring the dumbbell straight above the chest, bring it just shy of vertical. Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough. I think you can certainly do that if you want to. This was commonly always seen as like a lat exercise, but biomechanically it's actually more of a chest exercise, specifically targeting more of the costal pec fibers, being the lower pec fibers here, which is just an interesting point that you may know, that this is actually probably better suited for the chest than it is for the lats. Is it a movement I like personally? It's not one of my favorites, but you can certainly do it if you want to. So I've looked at Caroline's RDLs a few times, and every time I've watched them, they've improved, and I think she's doing a really good job here. So she used to go all the way down really low, and she's still going quite low, but she's definitely cutting from a bit. She's getting lower now, you see. And you can see from the earlier reps, you see there, she's going just below the knees and her hips are still translating backwards, and then she's pushing it lower and lower here, and her hips are no longer translating backwards, and now she's getting that additional range of motion through her lower back rather than her glutes or her hamstrings. It's something I would typically try and avoid, because typically when you're doing movements like this, you're doing so with the intention of glutes and hamstrings. When you start going to the point where your hips are no longer translating backwards and you're just going down with it like there, the lower back is then taking over and the glutes and hamstrings are getting pushed to the side, which is something I have pointed out before. So it started better. It's still good, don't get me wrong, it's still good, but it started off better than it ended slightly. So close stance squat. Keep looking ahead throughout, ensure heels on the ground at all times, absolutely. Try not to severely lock out every rep. So I covered this in my leg press video, is locking out the reps during like leg press variations, and let's say squat variations as well, isn't actually inherently bad. A lot of times when you see people hurt themselves during locking out leg presses and stuff, they're usually handling load far beyond their capabilities. So if you are lifting within your means and not ego lifting, then locking out the joints isn't actually going to be bad for you. A lot of the times you see these dudes snapping their legs doing movements like this, it's because they're lifting far more weight than they're able to, and the range of motion they're going through is also abysmal. Personally, I would probably favour doing this sitting down, because then it reduces the potential limiting factor of the core here, but you don't have to, it's just a preference. But yeah, shoulder press is fantastic. If you find shoulder pressing with flared elbows doesn't feel too great in your shoulders, then try just tucking them slightly and pressing down at 45 degrees. It's working the same muscle groups, being the delts obviously, but it may just be a bit easier on the shoulders. And the one thing I like there is you see Caroline going all the way down. Look at that, she's getting all the way down to her shoulders. She's not skimpy on range of motion. This is fantastic. Big ends flip around. Caroline's range of motion on movements has never been problematic. I think she's always smashed it, and technically she's a very good lifter, a very clean and consistent lifter too. Next one, this is a new movement I've not seen Caroline do before, being the lat sweep, she calls it. So again, when we look at how effective this is for what muscles, we look at the upper arm positioning. If the upper arm is close to the body, this is typically going to be more of the lats. As the upper arm comes a bit further away from the body, it's going to arguably bring in a bit more of the rear delts. So for example, this, you can certainly see her lats working, but you also see her rear delts working here. So it's kind of in the midpoint. What I would personally do for this movement is I would probably make it more of a rear delt fly by bringing the arms back. Same kind of motion, but at 45 degrees instead of tucked to the body. As like I said, we've had a few lat movements earlier, being the renegade row and the bent over row. This could just be a nice means of bringing the rear delts instead. The thing that Caroline noted before is she said move through a range of motion that's comfortable, and that's what she's doing here, which I think is fantastic. Because if you end up forcing yourself into an unnatural range of motion, it can put a lot of pressure on bits of the shoulders you probably don't want pressure to be on, therefore could potentially increase the risk of injury. But I think regarding movements itself, I think it's okay. If you're looking at it mainly for like the side delts, I think there are better alternatives, being like lateral raises, where you can bring the arm maybe 45 degrees in front of you, so you're working the scapular plane rather than directly out to the side. If you're looking at things like the traps, then I think shrug variations might arguably be better, but I do think that the upright row is still a fine movement, and you can certainly include it if you want to. Okay, so we've got a bit of a combo movement here. So toe reach to leg lower, no rest, interesting. Dumbbell in hand, we crunch up, leg raise. So the crunch up, where you see she's reducing the distance between her sternum and her pelvis, is very much going to bring in the abdominal muscles here. But then the leg raise afterwards is very much going to bring in the hip flexors, because you see there's no reduction in distance between the pelvis and the sternum. I think it's a good combination. It's nice that she's including both, but this is also a very difficult movement, so don't feel disheartened if you can't do it. You can always do an alternative where you have bent knees, makes it a bit easier, and then you can just straighten your legs out like so, and maybe just run it without the dumbbell as well, so just go no weight. But no, I think it's a good move, and as a whole, I think this is a really nice workout that Carol has included here, because she's got the hamstrings going, she's got the glutes going, she's got the quads going, she's got the shoulders going, she's got the chest going, she's got back muscles going like the lats, etc, etc. She's got the abs going as well, the hip flexors. She's also indirectly working things like the biceps, the triceps, etc through the pressing and pulling motions. I think when it comes to effective full body workouts, I think she's ticked a lot of boxes here, and it's bloody good to see, but it's also not surprising. But now we flip around and look at the comparison between this full body workout and MadFit's full body workout. Obviously, I'm very familiar with Caroline, I'm a big fan of her work, but I've not really explored MadFit before, so I'm curious, but I'm going to keep an open mind. We're starting with a combo movement, it seems, which is a squat. As we come up, we then go into side lateral raise. Again, I'm not a massive fan of combo movements myself. I feel like when you're performing a combo movement, you end up typically reducing the effectiveness of both movements to then combine them, whereas they could be more effective if you did them separately. Like the squat, for example, is a fantastic movement, and the lateral raise is a fantastic movement. Pairing them together, although yes, it does work to an extent here, I think it would probably be better to do them separately, and I feel like pairing them together is more of a thing to make it look better. But is it worth making it look cooler if it means it's reducing how effective it is? A question only you can answer. So this workout's a bit more of a different approach. So Caroline's workout was very much resistance based, in the sense of like it was almost quite hypertrophy driven. Whereas this workout seems to be a combination of not only hypertrophy driven but also caloric expenditure driven. So we've got this fast paced movement going on, a lot of movement to get the calories burning and the heart rate pumping, which is fine, it's cool. I think this movement itself is fine. I don't really have many complaints about it. I think for its intended purpose, which is calorie expenditure, I think it's solid. So a single leg RDL. Again, I think the single leg RDL, provided you have the balance to do so, is a solid movement. Personally, I prefer more of like a B stance RDL, which is where your feet are like a staggered stance. But no, the single leg is fine. But again, I don't know if it's particularly necessary to combine it with a curl, because if you think about the size of the hamstrings versus the size of the biceps, also fun fact, there's technically a bicep muscle in the hamstrings. So you got a biceps up here, then you've also got the bicep femoris, which is one of the muscles of the hamstrings. So that's a fun fact for you. But again, if you think about how much you can RDL in comparison to how much you can dumbbell curl, it's going to be a big difference. So I can RDL roughly about 3 times as much weight as I can dumbbell curl. Therefore, combining the movements when there's going to be a mass difference in we'll say load capacity here, is just going to reduce how effective it is for one of the movements, and it's largely probably going to be the RDL. What we're trying to do here is essentially we're trying to work the shoulders and the lower body as well. So obviously we're going through the glutes and the quads for the squat variation, and then we're getting some shoulders directly through the pressing variation and this kind of side raise alternative, and also some triceps too through the extension of the elbow through the press. Again, it's another combo movement that I'm not sure I would include, because again, you've got to think about load capacity of each movement. How much can you squat in comparison to how much you can side raise? How much can you squat in comparison to how much you can shoulder press? It's probably going to be a big difference. So like I said, I probably side raise a quarter of what I shoulder press, and I probably squat about 2.5 times as much as I shoulder press. Although combination movements do look really cool, are you reducing how effective it is for at least one of the muscle groups that you're looking to target, just for the sake of mixing movements together that probably shouldn't be mixed together? I think if you had to mix the movements together, you arguably have more of a place doing like the squat and the RDL, because although you're probably going to squat more than you can RDL, the distance between the two is going to be much closer. And if you're doing this for the sake of caloric expenditure, then it doesn't really matter so much, because it ultimately comes down to just moving and getting your heart rate up. So how you pair the movements or how you combine the movements isn't going to be as much of a driving factor or as much of an importance. But when it comes down to actually like working the muscles themselves with the intended purpose of building some muscle, even if that's just minor hypertrophy to align with the goal of sculpting the body here, so full body sculpt, then you have to say, is this combination effective? The biggest driver when looking at actually building any muscle, and this doesn't mean just for bodybuilding, but just building muscle in general, is how close you're going to failure. If you're doing like an RDL and dumbbell curl combination, your dumbbell curl may be going quite close close to failure, so therefore mechanical tension is going to be in a good point for the biceps, therefore growth will likely occur. But your RDLs are going to be really falling behind because they can lift far more load, and therefore because they can lift far more load, they will then require far more reps of that lighter load to get close to failure and achieve sufficient mechanical tension for growth. Therefore you're kind of just prioritizing ineffective reps, not really getting a lot for the hamstrings or the glutes. In that case, you might as well just do the dumbbell curl separately and the RDL separately to get more for both of them. And another thing to note with the dumbbell curl, it's actually more of a dumbbell hammer curl, because obviously we have that neutral wrist position, which is not only going to work the biceps, but it's actually going to shift a bit more of the emphasis onto the brachialis, which is a muscle that kind of sits like below it sort of thing. And also you typically hammer curl more than you can dumbbell curl in a lot of cases. But again, like I said, combination movements do definitely have a time and a place, but more for caloric expenditure, or maybe even fun. If your primary purpose of this workout is just have fun with it, then yeah, combination movements are fantastic because they are really fun and they look very cool and exciting. But if you're really looking at milking the results and getting as much of a result as possible, you've got to consider, is the combination of movements a good combination, and is this really going to help you achieve your goals? That's a question only you can answer. And a similar sort of thing applies here. We look at like a renegade row variation into a tricep kickback. Again, you're probably going to renegade row more than you can kickback. The same message is pretty apparent throughout the entire workout. So although I don't think it's a bad workout whatsoever, I think if I were directly comparing them side by side for not only caloric expenditure, to be honest, but also hypertrophy benefits of building muscle and arguably building strength as well, I would align with saying Caroline's is probably my preferred of the two. When it looks at fun, again, because I find resistance training and like heavy training really fun, I would say that I would deem Caroline's to be more fun, but you actually may deem MadFit's to be more fun due to the inclusion of combination movements. So although I don't necessarily deem to be as effective as you might think, if they're fun and you enjoy them and you can stick to them and actually want to do them, I would then argue that they are very effective, because then they're effective to helping you remain consistent. It's all well and good me saying this is good for this or not so good for this, but at the end of the day, if the workout encourages you to stick at it, encourages you to try, and encourages you to get moving whilst also aligning with your goals, and is also something you can remain consistent with, if you tick those boxes, I would say it's effective for you. What's effective for one may not be effective for another. So it really does depend on what you're trying to achieve and why you want to achieve it. I would definitely be keen to explore MadFit's content further, because again, this is the only video of hers I've really seen recently anyway. I think I have actually covered one of her videos in the past, and I'm definitely curious to see what her other content looks like and what her other workouts look like, as she is a name that has popped up a lot, and she is a very known creator within the industry, so I'll be curious to see what she's doing. If I had to directly choose, I think both creators have a time and a place. I think both creators are good in their own regard. I think if for my preferences and my desires, if I had to choose one of them, I would personally align more with Caroline's workouts, but again, you may actually align more with MadFit's workouts. It really does depend, and there's no right or wrong, and there's no someone being better or worse. It purely is preferences and goals. Obviously, again, no comment question of the week this week, because again, I filmed this before I went away, but we should be back to comment question of the week next video, which I believe is going to be Thursday. Like I said at the start of the video, if you like the video and maybe even learned something from the video, then please do consider liking the video and subscribing to the YouTube channel by clicking the red button down below and maybe even tickling the bell next to it so you get notified when I upload every week, twice a week. And if you have a question you want me to answer at the end of the next video, then please do consider drop it down below in the comment section for comment question of the week, and I shall do so. Thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for tolerating yet again another missed comment question of the week, and thank you for tolerating the video.